2006 Chevy HHR with a nasty oil leak. Gonna show you how to fix it. Gray, black, and blue, exactly how you're gonna feel after you do this job. Alright, this is the business end of this job, which is the oil cooler right down here. There it is. Why they have these on a 4-cylinder, I have no idea. But in between the oil cooler and the block here is where those seals go bad, and then they leak straight down there and make a puddle on the floor. And we cannot have that. So, going to this bolt, obviously relatively easy to get to. The other one is almost directly underneath of it and inboard a little bit, so it's the worst one to get to. And then there's one on the back side, farther back, which is not so bad, but it's still a pain. So since I have an engine out here up on the stand, the oil cooler sits in this area. This one's fairly easy. This one's fairly easy. This one's a bear. It takes forever. So you're only sealing right to this surface here. The best tool you can use for this is a 1/4-inch drive extension that's flexible. Not a universal joint, an actual flexible extension. So that can get in underneath. Once you get the bolt loose, you can get it out with that. Probably even put it on a drill and get it out with that. Same with the one in the back. This one obviously is a piece of cake. But you got to get them loose first, and that's the hard part. Okay, you're going to need as much access as you can get on this, which is going to involve taking out these gray clips so you can get these connectors off for the camshaft position sensor, which you don't want to damage. So you move those out of the way so that you can get some room to get on these bolts. Here's a quick tip. When you're working in tight spaces like this and you've got wires everywhere, whatever you do, don't stress the wires, as in like putting your hand in between cables here and to where it pulls on them and causes tension. You're just going to end up having problems. It'll just come right out. You may not even know it. Unplug your cables, get them loose, get them out of the way. Make sure you put them back when you put everything back. Okay, I went ahead and unplugged the computer just because this is getting to be a pain for access. These are all color-coded, gray, black, and blue. So it's impossible to mix them up. The only thing that's really in the way here is the radiator hose. And I do not want to take that off and deal with that mess. So I'm gonna soldier on trying to get the back bolt there that's underneath the oil cooler and behind it there. A little bit of a pain to get to. And there's two hoses here, so I'm gonna try and move them out of the way the best I can and go at it that way. Otherwise, they gotta come out. I am really struggling with this final bolt, the third one underneath the cooler. This is the bolt that's so hard to get to, that you cannot see. You cannot get a socket on it. I mean, you can get a socket on it, but you can't get anything on it to turn it. No hope of getting a ratchet on it. No hope of a ratcheting wrench, which I have around here somewhere. Probably dropped it down into the cylinder. Anyway, stuck using old-fashioned box end and open end. So what's happening is I'm getting on the bolt head, which is directly beneath the engine oil cooler. Thank you, Chevrolet. And you cannot see it. I can reach it, touch it from this side, and I can get a wrench in this side. You know, the engine block is here. So as I'm turning it, I can turn it just a little bit that way, and then when I go back down, I cannot get on it again. So I have to use this end. This fits, turn it a little bit, I cannot get it back on that way, cannot get it back on that way. So I have to go back to this side. So this is one of those situations where a 12-point box end, little bit worn, works. It's got a little more tolerance than a new wrench would. And this is my Craftsman 10mm, so it's a good wrench. This is like the worst case scenario in my book. Just no need for this. Why is there an oil cooler on a 2.4 liter 4-cylinder Chevy grocery getter anyway? I don't get that. And I do know that some of the engines, some of the cars came with an oil cooler, some of them didn't. I still don't understand the logic of why cars go every day without oil coolers. My Suburban doesn't have an oil. Maybe it does have an oil cooler for a tow package. Scratch that. But they deleted it eventually, so I'd love to block it off and not even use it. Just a pain. I'd be curious to know how much a shop charges labor rate to do this job. I do know the O-rings are $31 a piece, and I'd also like to know if there are any special tools for getting down in here and getting these bolts out. And I mean, there's 3 bolts. Honestly, this whole job should take no more than an hour. Take the air cleaner off, take the 3 bolts out. You know, if you need to move the computer, that takes a minute. And then take the 3 bolts out, pull it up, pull the seals off, put the new seals on, put it back on, put your 3 bolts on, you're done. An hour tops. This has turned into several hours. You don't even want to know. I always put a dab of anti-seize on my bolts, especially steel bolts that are going into aluminum threads. Makes it a whole lot easier if you got to take it out. Not that I ever want to take these out again. The struggle continues. Still got 1 bolt. Which on the back side is right here. With the transmission here, you're going to have a heck of a time getting a wrench on that. There's not even that much room to turn it. The transmission's sitting here and it's got a big hump, but the oil cooler's right here, so you have like that much room. So there is a distinct difference when it comes to these seals. You see those? These have these little ribs all the way around. They are from General Motors, genuine parts, 2 different sizes. You can see the part numbers. Screenshot that if you need to order these. You need 1 of each. So they're a little different than what's in there, that's for sure. Besides being a different color, let's open up one of these. I'll take one of those out. Typical O-ring is round. Sorry about that. Typical O-ring is round. These are not round. They're flat. See that profile? These are flat, which is okay, because it's just got a seal in between 2 surfaces like that. So this should do that. Hopefully they are wide enough to take care of that. We shall see. Okay, sorry about the light situation. I promise I will get another light so that you guys can see this a little better. So I got these two surfaces cleaned off, the old O-rings out, new O-rings going in. Just sit right in there. These fit correctly in the holes and they stick out past the surface here, which is what needs to happen to seal against the other side of the engine block. Alright, the last thing to do after you get the oil cooler bolts back in is to get all your wires back where they're supposed to go, the cables, because everything wants to get in your way of doing this. So you want to put your cam shaft sprocket sensor cable back on. The one for, I think this is an evap solenoid, and of course all your cables for your computer. So you want to get all that back in before you start anything else. Well, one good thing, this is how difficult it is to put the computer back in. It's pretty much, put this one in first. Just put your cables back on in the color space that they came off. The color space, whatever. You know what I'm talking about. That's one. Don't press these on too hard. Gray, black, and blue. Exactly how you're gonna feel after you do this job. This one goes back in there. And now I'm gonna just put my put everything back reverse order. Any clamps or harness holders that you had to take off to get this out, to move things, you want to make sure you put those back. They are there for a reason. Power brake booster hose. This is the computer reinstalled. It's just those three cables. They are all color coded, gray, black, and blue. A tool that would have been really helpful with this would have been a 1/4" drive extension that's flexible. One that will actually bend, not a U-joint, an actual flexible extension, which I'm going to add to my toolbox here shortly, because I thought I already had one, but I don't. Okay, the oil cooler is now on. All three bolts are in, they're tight, they are not torqued, because I don't know how you get a torque wrench down in there, to be honest with you, and you're only compressing O-rings. So I put some anti-seize on the bolts, got the bolts back into the holes that they're supposed to go into, and it's on. I think Ed China would refer to this job as fiddly, but I think it's much more than that. In the time that it took me to get those three bolts out, change the two O-rings, not including time waiting for parts, I could have been well on my way to having this engine completely out of here. If you want to avoid problems after you put everything back together, make sure you connect this. Goes to the air cleaner right there. Mass airflow sensor. So that's the easiest thing to forget when doing anything on this, because pretty much to do anything on this is the first thing that's got to come off. So don't forget the cable. You'll do it once or twice and realize you did it, and then hopefully you won't do it anymore. Also, clean up your tools.